What's going on, guys, and welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where every single week I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're talking the Let Me Tell You Something Mean Gene special that aired after Raw on the network this past week, celebrating the career, life, and legacy of the WWE Hall of Famer, the late, great, Mean Gene Okerlund. It's about a half hour in length. Didn't have the chance to watch it until Wednesday. And according to Seth Rollins on Twitter, he said this on Twitter the day that Mean Gene passed away about 2 weeks ago on the 2nd of January, that they filmed a bunch of stuff. All the interviews that were filmed here with Rollins, probably Hogan, and all the others, they were all filmed that same day, only about a week before Mean Gene passed away. Rollins put something up on Twitter a few weeks ago, the day that Mean Gene passed, like I said, saying that, oh man, this is such a bummer. We just got done talking about how great Mean Gene was for our industry for something completely unrelated about a week ago. Probably for like a network special like this, but not knowing he was going to fucking die. You know what I mean? Like they were probably going to use it for something else, like another DVD or whatever else. Maybe for, like those old countdown shows that we would have on the network years ago, like stuff like that, like evergreen content, but ended up coming in handy for this special airing a few weeks removed from his death. But no, this was great. There was a lot of stuff involved in the special that I never knew about Mean Gene. Obviously, I knew his, the basics of his WWE career and how he kind of, his claim to fame as one of, not even just one of, but the greatest wrestling announcer of all time in terms of interviewing. No one was better than Mean Gene. But I also got to learn a bit about his upbringing, him leaving WWE, his closest friends, who he enjoyed working with, so on and so forth. So Triple H, to kick off the special here, said, this was a quote from a little later on, but he was quoted in saying, he made everyone look better, which is absolutely true. Mean Gene, no matter who he was interviewing, always made who he was interviewing look like $1 million. Sometimes at the expense of himself. That was the magic of Mean Gene Okerlund. But Mean Gene telling his own story here. So again, this was filmed only about a week or two before he died, which is pretty crazy. But he talks about being born in South Dakota in 1942. Not to believe anything you read in Wikipedia, because it's probably not true. He said he became a fan of wrestling in his mid-teens, and that it was the interviews that really caught his eye. And something I didn't know here, he actually became a radio disc jockey at one point, going by the name of Gene Leader. So that I did not know. Pat Patterson said he had the voice that made him a professional. And Mean Gene talked about knowing how to ad-lib, and that was what made his promos and interview skills so great, because the guy could make up anything on the spot. And he had great comedic timing, too. Michael Cole said he always gave it back. Like he never, essentially what Michael Cole's saying here is that Mean Gene never took shit from anybody. And I was just talking about this on the show on Wrestle Rant Radio about a week or two ago, right after Mean Gene passed, that, he's special in that way. We will never have another Mean Gene. And the reason why he was so special, not only in terms of his charisma and his voice and whatnot, was also because he had the balls. He, actually had balls in terms of, he didn't take shit from anyone. Interviewers nowadays, they get, intimidated way too easily. They're an afterthought. They're a background player, which interviewers should be. I'm not saying they should be the focal point of the interview, but at the same time, they should be able to push back. Not make the superstars look inferior to them, of course, but at least show some backbone. Mean Gene had that. Hulk Hogan talked about how his first promos were with Mean Gene in the AWA, and that Hogan had his back turned during his first promos, and Mean Gene was an essential factor in his success in his early AWA days, and then later on in WWE. Speaking of which, I'm not sure who it was exactly that came up with the Mean Gene nickname. I think they mentioned it here. I might have missed it, though I do know that whoever came up with it, it was Hogan that drove it into the ground by saying exactly what the title of the special is called. Let me tell you something, Mean Gene, in AWA, in WWF. That was where the Mean Gene name really maybe not came from, but that's how it got going and really took off, was because of Hulk Hogan saying it in every other promo, if not every single fucking promo. Not only that, but when Hogan left the AWA for the WWF, he told Gene to come with him. So that was right when wrestling went mainstream. Gene got to interview a bunch of different celebrities in time for the first WrestleMania, which he absolutely loved. And he made the most of every single interview, no matter how often sometimes they went off tracks and went off the tracks and whatever. Mean Gene always got the best out of everybody he interviewed. Seth Rollins talked about how he had a personality, and he always had a snarky comeback for everything that was thrown at him. He always played off the talent. He was great at playing off the talent, and that was what made him so awesome. I think Charlotte talked about that. Mean Gene also said that he worked beautifully with Randy Savage. They had awesome chemistry together. He was easily his favorite superstar to interview, aside from Hulk Hogan, of course. Savage liked working with him, and Gene liked working with him. And we see one clip of Gene telling Savage what to say. Off camera. It was on camera. It was caught on camera. But before they went live, Gene's like, say it like this. And then we see Savage saying it like that. And then the guy behind the camera goes, yep, that's the one. So I've never seen stuff like that before with Mean Gene. So I thought that was really, really cool. He played an essential factor, like I said earlier, not only in the success of Hulk Hogan, but in the promos of Randy Savage, The Ultimate Warrior, Jake the Snake Roberts, so on and so forth. And the guy did everything. He did everything and anything that was asked of him. And again, you would see him diving in lakes and going to all these different settings and dressing up. It was amazing. And he felt like he was growing every year that he was in the WWF. Every year that passed, he was getting bigger and he was getting better. Though he did admit that he was getting restless towards the end of his WWE run, towards the final few years of his WWE run, he was getting restless. And he didn't feel as challenged as much as he once did. So he felt it was time to move on. He approached Vince and he was like, I think it's time for me to go. Gave him a hug. He looked at him like a brother. And he walked away, and there was no bad blood. He then moved on to WCW, which I think Hogan, or it might have been Michael Cole who said this, or Triple H rather, said it was a massive shift, both in front of and behind the camera. He was involved in everything and anything huge that WCW had going on, including the NWO, bringing Hogan in the early 1990s, and so on and so forth. And Hogan said he made it look like we were the place to be. He made it look like WCW was where everyone wanted to be. And Gene even admitted, here he goes, the move for me was the best thing I could have done. So he does not regret moving to WCW at all. I'm sure it was a bigger paycheck. They loved having him. He had a lot of fun over there. There's a lot of people who will say, I went to WCW and I was miserable. I just did it for the money. Gene genuinely enjoyed working there, it seemed. And he had a lot of fun working there with Hogan and all the others, Randy Savage. And obviously it wasn't WWE, but he did know that he wanted to go back home to WWF at one point. So he had an 8-year run there. I'm not sure if he left before WCW folded or after, or when it folded, I don't remember. Though he did return to WWE in time for WrestleMania 17 to do a commentary for the Gimmick Battle Royal, which was won by the Iron Sheik. Him and Bobby Heenan did the commentary for it. It was a lot of fun. Not the next year, but 5 years later, he became the first announcer to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2006, being inducted by Hulk Hogan. I forgot who had said it. Maybe Michael Cole had said, or Triple H. They said that the guy never had a bad day. He enjoyed everything that he was a part of in WWE. He was so entertaining. He was always a lot of fun to be around. The guy was always in a great mood. We see that he starred in Legends House, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm glad they're still bringing clips of that up even 5 years later. I fucking love Legends House when it originally aired, and then I rewatched it about 2-3 years ago and reviewed it actually for WWE Network and Chill. So if you want to check out my reviews of Legends House, you can do so. They're in the early editions of Network and Chill from late 2016. But we see the highlights of Gene's time in Legends House, which you put 7 legends together. It aired in 2014, but it was filmed back in 2012. I'm honestly shocked that no one passed away in those 2 years, because Roddy Piper and now Mean Gene is gone too. So had they waited any longer, who would have known how much of a different show and how much of a different feel that show would have had. But anyway, he said, oh yeah, that was a very interesting month out of my life, which being sarcastic because He clearly did not like it. The whole show was amazing because it was so off the cuff and they were just being themselves. And just seeing like these 7 or 8 legends bicker was amazing. And he credited Pat Patterson, who he's good friends with, for surviving. Had it not been for Pat Patterson, he probably would have not made it out with his sanity intact. Meanwhile, Seth Rollins says that he will go down as the greatest of all time in terms of announcers. He could always play the straight man or a comedy figure. And then Hogan closes it out by saying, there will never be another one. As in, there will never be another Mean Gene Okerlund. So, again, I thought this special was great. I really, really enjoyed it. A little bit of everything from the comedy to the serious stuff to stuff I never knew that I'm sure people probably already did know. But, they showed clips of him hosting WWE shows from the Vintage Collection to WWE Confidential to the stuff he was doing with Renee Young up until a fucking couple weeks ago. He was still doing stuff for WWE, like, literally up until the day that he died, which is absolutely amazing. For a guy that was like 70-something years old, 73 years old, he was still a part of the company in every way possible. He was, I think, a part of Raw 25. He was a part of Raw 25. He interviewed AJ Styles backstage, which was pretty cool. But behind the scenes, he was involved in as much as he could in terms of all the network stuff. He was the voice behind Storytime, so unfortunately, it looks like that show has since come to an end because they can't have someone else do it. I think that it just wouldn't be right. But going back to the special, though, I thought this was great. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Great 30 minutes, well worth the time. So be sure to check it out on the WWE Network entitled, Let Me Tell You Something, Mean Gene. So be sure to like this video, guys, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. We'll be back with more reviews, more content right here on the channel in the days to come. Until then, guys, have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.